Hello and welcome everyone. So this is Cluey Amateurs, I'm Jamie and today I'll be doing another side-by-side review. Today it's a bit of a Victorinox showdown. Now Victorinox make loads and loads of different Swiss army knives and here I've got two of them. Now these are two that I consider probably the best options for EDC, particularly in the UK where there are quite restrictive knife laws. So I've got the Alox Pioneer and I have got the Spartan, so a relatively new knife and a very classic knife. Now, we'll start off by talking about what they look like. So we'll start with the Alox design. Now, I think these are really pretty knives. Now, Alox is short for aluminium oxide because the handle scales are just aluminium allowed to form its own protective oxide layer. You've then got this nicely embossed Victorinox logo. The soldier is very similar to this, except here they have the Swiss Army's logo, and I don't believe it has a keyring. Yeah, on the whole, like I say, really nice knife. Got a little engraving plate there as well, and personally I think these make great gifts, especially if you've got someone in your life who maybe isn't interested in knives or isn't that comfortable around knives. It's a good way to introduce them to them and get them thinking that they're tools rather than weapons. When it's open, got that nice classic Victorinox blade shape. We're going to compare the blades a bit more closely once we've taken a look at the Spartan. So this is the Spartan. This is what you would kind of consider your classic Swiss army knife. It's got that nice red, you've got the little silver Victorinox logo on there. There are a couple of extras on this one. I've got a titanium clip on here at the moment because normally it would live in the coin pocket of my trousers, but where I'm wearing shorts in this heat, a lot of those don't have coin pockets, so I do like to be able to clip it onto the pocket. Also, inside the corkscrew, I have got a glasses screwdriver for tightening up the screws on the glasses. Now, I really like the look of the classic Victorinox. I think a lot of people do, even people who aren't interested or happy with knives being around them. And for that reason, as much as I love the look of the Pioneer, I think that from an aesthetic point of view, this is a better EDC knife. People see one of these and they think, oh, it's a Swiss Army knife. I know what that is, therefore I'm comfortable with it. And when you're trying to decide what knife to carry, especially in somewhere like the UK, that's a big consideration. So while I think this is really useful, I think this is it looks more acceptable. You can also get these in a bunch of different colours. I know they did the clear one, or jelly I think they called it, those look pretty cool. You can get the black one, but then that starts to look a bit, not tactical, but like you're trying to hide that you've got it. You can also get the camo, and you can get loads of different designs, but I like the classic red. You can see this one's quite beaten up, so this has been my EDC for a long time. In terms of materials, both of them have the same blade steel. I've been trying to find out what steel this is, but no one seems to be able to agree on the forums. I can't find an official answer anywhere, so I'm not going to claim it's one thing or another. But this is a really nice blade steel, especially for someone who's new to knives. It's highly corrosion resistant. You hear about people finding these that have been left outdoors for years and they're fine. It's very soft steel, which does mean it can bend, it will lose its edge quickly, but it's also super easy, even for someone who's not that familiar with knives or not that familiar with knife sharpening, to get a sharp edge on it. I actually use the Victorinox sharpening tool, where you've got a sharpening rod and ceramic stone set at the right angle, and I find that puts a lovely edge on these. Obviously the Pioneer made out pretty much the same materials except for those Alox aluminium oxide handles. Okay, so we'll talk a bit about the size. These are actually a very similar size. Hold them up next to each other. You can see the Pioneer is just a smidge longer, ever so slightly thinner in profile. We'll talk about why that is in a moment, and also ever so slightly narrower that way. I'll give these a quick weigh. I've got some little micro scales down here. Now, just in my hand, this feels heavier, and that weighs in at 70.4 grams. Whereas the Spartan, even with that pocket clip on, is about 10 grams lighter. So that is the lighter of the two, and you will probably feel that a bit if you're carrying it in your pocket. Now, on to what's probably the most important bit, or the most relevant bit, functions. So we'll start off with the Pioneer. Now, obviously you've got your main blade, it's got a really nice thick blade, but also a nice thick back spring, which makes it much heavier, much higher resistance to opening and closing. I'll hold that up against the Spartan there for you, and there are the blade profiles next to each other. You also got a slightly wider blade on the Pioneer, giving you a bit better belly of the blade to cut with. Now, I haven't really used this Pioneer very much. I'll just grab a piece of paper to show you how sharp it is out of the box. So, really nice sharp blade out of the box. But even after a lot of use, so too has my... Oh, maybe not. Oh, yeah, there we go, I just caught the bottom of the blade. Yeah, so too has the Spartan. So that's the blade on the Victorinox Pioneer. We'll fold that back in. In terms of other tools, you also have the awl. Now the awl on these is absolutely fantastic. I'll just grab the awl out of the Spartan to compare. So this is actually a reamer and punch designed for putting thread through leather, whereas this is an actual awl designed for punching holes. And anytime I've got a belt that I need to put a new hole in, I will go straight to this tool. It's got a really sharp point, great edge, and as you turn it, it just makes a really clean hole. Obviously, if ever you do need to use this to get a stitch through leather though, it does lack the hot threading hole of the Spartan. So that's the blade, the awl, again nice heavy back spring on that, it's unlikely to close on you while you're using it. Your other tools, you've got the Victorinox tin opener with the small flathead or Phillips screwdriver. A lot of people struggle to use these. I actually find them all right, especially in my student days. I use these quite a lot when you go to a communal kitchen and someone had moved the tin opener. Now I don't really use them so much, but they are nice to have around. At the other end, you have the cap lifter, bottle opener, the wire stripper, and your large flathead screwdriver. Now, if we compare that to the one on the Spartan, again, like the blade, it's much thicker. You've got a much stronger back spring on there. So if you do need to use this for really twisting a tight screw, or even for light prying duties, not recommended, this is going to stand up better. You also have the keyring on there, but I tend not to use that. So those are the functions on the Victorinox Pioneer. So you've already seen the main blade and the cap lifter on the Spartan. In addition to those, you've once again got that tin opener, very similar to the one on here, and as I've said, perfectly functional and gives you your small flathead screwdriver. Got one of my favourite tools, which is the small blade. Now again, thinking about how these knives are perceived by other people, how we look using them, this smaller blade is that much less threatening. I also like the fact that you can do fine work with it, so use it almost as a craft knife, so if you've got a good edge on it, or you can use it like a Stanley knife without risking puncturing a box or some tape and the thing underneath. And again, so again, nice and sharp. Could actually probably do with a little bit of attention, that one. At the top here, tucked into the scales, we've got our toothpick, which I don't really use. I think it's kind of gross reusing a toothpick, but it's nice to have there. And the tweezers, which I do use for all sorts of fine work. They don't come to much of a point, they're very square-ended, but they do meet really nicely, making them very usable. The back of the knife, we've already looked at the reamer and punch. Also got the corkscrew, restore my glasses screwdriver. When I was first looking at buying this, I was torn between this and the Tinker, which is the same in every way, except that there is a dedicated Phillips or crosshead screwdriver here. But around the same time I got into good red wine, and a bottle opener is always handy for that. Once again, you've got the keyring, and as I've already said, I've currently got a titanium pocket clip on there. So in terms of functionality, you get a lot more functions with the Spartan. However, I would say that the main blade and well, the main blade, the awl, and also the bottle opener slash screwdriver on this are a lot more hardy. They are better tools, they're easier to use. So if you need those functions particularly, but not any of the extra functions that are found on the Spartan, you might like to consider the Pioneer instead. Now, in terms of cost, you can pick up Pioneers for kind of £15, £16 at a lot of shops in the UK. So I think I got this one at Go Outdoors, but loads of good outdoor shops stock these, also easy to find online. The Pioneer is a bit trickier to get hold of and a bit more expensive. So the RRP on these is £32. I actually nearly paid that for one in the Victorinox shop in London. However, I bought this one for I believe £24 on Knives and Tools. And they're actually really good for getting good prices on Victorinox products. Now, the fact that these are that much more difficult to find and more expensive, again, for me, makes this a worse EDC here in the UK. If you accidentally take a knife into a situation where you can't have one, you have to give it up, and you might not get it back, then you've lost more and it's going to take you longer to replace this. The Spartan, it's that little bit cheaper, and if you lose it, if it gets taken away from you, it's that bit easier to replace. If so, I did have to hand this over, I would ask if I could take the screwdriver out though, because those are surprisingly pricey. Okay, so that's the price, those are the functions, and really that brings me on to the conclusion. Which one do I prefer? Well, you can see how battered this one is. I think we all know this is my EDC. And that's because it's got lots of the tools that I want, but also I feel comfortable carrying it in the UK because other people feel comfortable when I use it. So in that sense, I avoid a lot of potential trouble. I do, however, sometimes carry the Pioneer or my other Alox knives, and there are kind of two very different situations where I would choose to do this. One would be if I was going to a more formal occasion with people I knew, so wedding's a weird example, but something along those lines, because it's smarter, it's thinner, so even though it's heavier, it doesn't ruin the line of a suit so much. And also, they know me, they know I'm, it's a Swiss Army knife, I always have one with me. The other end of the scale is if I was maybe going hiking or something, but couldn't justify taking a more heavy-duty knife, but wanted something with a slightly more solid blade, I would probably pop the Pioneer or one of my other Alox knives in my pocket, instead of, or as well as, my Spartan. So that's a quick rundown of the two. On the whole, both great knives, both very good UK legal EDC options. As I've said, the Spartan is probably the best for the sheer number of functions that it has, and also for it being universally accepted, whereas if you just want a handful of functions, a very high standard, where you've got that strong back spring, really solid tools, then I would probably recommend the Pioneer. So I hope that this has been useful to some of you. If it has, please do let us know in the comments, like, subscribe, wherever the buttons are now, and we will see you in the next one. I've been Jamie, this has been Cluey Amateurs, and yeah, I'll see you next time.